Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and we have a very special guest with us today, Cary Brown, who runs a family office after growing businesses in multiple industries, including an oil and gas company that he took public. So there's a whole story there. Cary, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here today. Hope it's beneficial.
Well, I'm sure it will be. You and I have had a little time around the fire pit to talk about this story, and thanks for letting us hit record on this one and sharing it with some friends. Cary, we always usually start with where you grew up, what your family was like. Was there sort of faith or entrepreneurship in the family? What was the situation growing up?
Great. So I spent the time I remember was in Midland, Texas, but I really started. My dad was an accountant, and then went to church one Sunday, and when I was 6 months old, he decided to go to the mission field, and he took me and my older brother and my mom to Brazil.
Wow.
When I was 6 months old, and left the business world and devoted his life to ministry for about 5 years. So that shaped our family a lot. Dad got called back, got sick a little bit, and came back after 5 years. And but that paradigm of, hey, when God calls you, go, was a blessing that I had from my mom and my dad, and so one of the things that has shaped our family life. I'm one of 6 kids, number 2 in that order. Grew up, by the time I guess 6, 7 years old, I got to Midland, Texas. If anybody knows anything about Midland, Texas, that's the oil capital in the Permian Basin. And so I grew up all around the oil business, and Dad was fortunate enough to work for some people that helped him get along. And then he and his partner started, they were church friends, and they started Brothers Production together. And Dad's partner, Jack McGraw, was a big mentor of mine. And probably, Jeff, when I was 10 years old, I had a dream that I'd come back and get to work with my dad in the oil and gas business in Midland, Texas. And fortunate enough, God kind of took me down that path. We started I went to Abilene Christian, got an accounting degree. Then from there, I went to Houston and did oil and gas accounting as an auditor. And then Grant Thornton brought me back to Midland, and started our first business. Dad, we were going to buy a business that kind of fell through. And so we started one called Petroleum Strategies. We knew it was going to be in petroleum, and we knew it was going to have strategies. We actually didn't know what we were going to do, but with Dad had a little bit of success. So most of my life, we didn't have very many resources. And along the way, about the time I was headed off to college, maybe a little bit in high school, but right before I went to college, as the oil business sometimes does, Dad hit a well that kind of turned things around, and he brought my mom home a new Lincoln Continental, and I went, "Uh-oh, Pop, what's changed? Something's going on here," because we never had that before. But that was a fun time, and so when I came back in '91. Dad had a little bit of success, and he made a deal with me and my brother that he would loan us the money to get started, and then we'd be partners. Not too long into it, that was with Petroleum Strategies, and then we started another oil company at the time. But my older brother decided to go into ministry and went that way. So then it was just Dad and I, and it was he sure made it look a lot easier than it went for me, Jeff. When I was about 6 months in, every month we weren't making any revenue, and I'm watching that loan balance grow and grow and grow. And the weight of that, I was feeling it. I was like, I can't. My dad had a little bit of resources, but he didn't have unlimited resources. And finally decided, hey, I just got to go in and tell them I've done. We were trying to do a consulting business in the like kind of exchange for oil and gas companies. And I had called on every oil and gas company, done everything I knew to do, and we had zero revenue. And so I went in Dad's office and I said, "Hey, Dad, I gave it my best shot. I did everything I could do. You know that. Yeah, and I can, if I go back to the accounting firm, I can get you paid off. It'll take me 10 years, but I'll get you paid off.
Wow.
And that was a really kind of tough day. And it was not an emotional event for him at all. He just looked at me and said, "Go back to work. I'll tell you when we're done here, and this thing's
Wow.
going to work." And that kind of changed my. I was like, "Okay, Pop, if you if you're going to keep going, we'll keep trying." And it wasn't. It was another 6 months. We didn't have any revenue for the first year, and that was a long year. And then we got a little bit of traction with one company, and then that started doing. And today, my brother runs that business, and I think we are. I don't think there would be anybody in the oil and gas field that's done more like kind exchanges than we have, and I bet we have 90% market share in that segment of the business. So it turned out to be pretty good, but it took a while, and we learned some lessons there. Started an oil business kind of at the same time we were doing that, and that's the one that I ended up taking public in 2007. So it was 91 when I actually the first business we started.
Man, I mean, we'll probably talk more about this and with the next generation,
Okay.
but I just think there's so many interesting things to me about your relationship with your dad. Um, First of all, what an amazing legacy to have a dad that's frankly obedient to the big man upstairs, to maybe chuck business, follow him wherever he says, including Brazil, and take babies with
Yep.
him, and and then that we talk a lot about delivering blessings to the next generation, and I think
Hmm.
that can take many forms, but that moment where you're like, hey, I gotta, I gotta hit, I gotta get out of this deal. I got a stop loss, as we
Right.
would say in our business. Like, I
Yep.
gotta stop the bleeding. I gotta make sure I can pay dad back, who's the bank, on this deal, and his belief in you to keep going, man. Whew, that speaks volumes. So I think
He's a
I'm
cool
just
dude.
thinking, what's that?
He's a really cool dude. He is
I
a
mean
cool man.
so I just think, and I know you're trying to pass that along, but maybe before we get to that part of it, tell us about. So you were in public accounting, so you know how hard it is to run a public company and what that all entails. Just talk a little about that process, and a lot of people haven't been through that. What was that like?
Yep. So that was so we started buying, you see the big sign that said we buy ugly houses. I was one of those guys that bought ugly oil wells. We were buying
Okay.
at that time. And really the change in life, I'm buying oil properties when oil's $8, $10,
Yeah.
using the bank's money. Dad had guaranteed it, so that helped a lot.
Yeah.
And so we rocked along, and we were doing we rolled that into a few deals. We'd buy some, sell some, rolled that in, and had an opportunity. A guy came and showed me, hey, the MLP model is
Oh,
coming
right.
into your space. And I looked at
On
that,
the
Jeff, and
production
I
side,
knew
right?
on the
Yeah.
production side.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the best way to own production. And once they came into the space, I couldn't continue to do what I was going to do. So I had a choice. You're either going to join them or you're going to sell out to them,
Oh, okay.
or you couldn't stay static. And there was actually a guy in Midland when I went, and at this time, we were kind of over the hump. We had enough coming in every month. We were debt free. I didn't need to go public, but I could tell that was where you needed to go. So there was a guy in Midland that had been uh, a mentor a little bit, and so I sat down with him and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about this. I know as an accountant I shouldn't go public. That's a really terrible idea." And I was expecting him to go, "Yes, Cary, that's a terrible idea. It's terrible
Hmm.
for your family, and it's terrible." And I'd prayed about it, but that's not what he said. He took me to the story of David, and he said, "Cary, um, it says at times when kings go out to war, David was back home, and that's when he fell to Bathsheba." And it feels to me like God may be telling you this is a place you need to go into. And yes, it's going to have impact on your family. And yes, it's going to be harder than what you're doing because I had a pretty good lifestyle at that time. Um, but you need to pray about that. And, in talking with, fortunately I had dad to run everything by, and his partner was their family had gone through some transitions. So taking it public ended up, we could pull everything together
Yeah.
and everybody had liquidity. So we did that. And that was, wonderfully difficult, challenging, uh, good time of life. And so it was, we went from, uh, not, I mean, we were a little bitty company. We weren't very much. And by the time we were done, we had bought $2 billion worth of oil properties from
Wow.
the down south all the way up to the Canadian border, and built really a team I was proud of. And that was, so it was a real interesting lot I learned through that period of time. I got very disenchanted with it. And disenchanted being, I got really tired when you've worked your whole life for yourself in the MLP model. We were issuing new units every time we
Yeah.
buy properties. So my ownership was going down every time we did a deal. And once I kind of figured out, hey, I was coming to work 95% of the time for my shareholders and 5% of the time for me, and I was spending 100% of my time, doing that. Just said, hey, we've got it in shape. Let's let somebody else take it forward. Um, and that's it ended up being a really not good experience through that, Jeff. As so when I made the decision, hey, let's get off of this train. It's in good shape. We were right at a $30 stock, paying a great dividend, and it was all in good shape. And oil went from $150 back down to 30. And
Yep.
before I could, uh, so in that model, you move from uh, the CEO to chairman for a little bit and then
Right.
out. And by the time I could get out, I think I sold every share for a nickel or something. And it was a not great experience going through that. So I learned a lot, and I don't know exactly why God put me through that um, time in my life. Don't well, looking back on it, I was like, man, I wish I hadn't done that in a lot of ways, Jeff. It's not, um, but also um, I feel like God was in it all the way, and I don't. So when I get to heaven, he and I'll have a conversation about, hey, God, bankruptcy was not in my ideal scenario. What I was trying to do things the way I thought would be God honoring. And I don't know that there was any part of that. It sure didn't feel God honoring when you have a company that falls apart like that. So I
Yeah.
don't
And I
know.
think, yeah,
That's a distraction part we don't necessarily
no,
go
that's
into, but
okay. I mean,
it was
we
a
were talking before.
challenging part of life.
Yeah, no, we were talking about before we started recording that. I mean, obviously, you're doing fine now. That I think that was 2007 to 2015 when all that was going on, and I think it's just a great reminder of God's always teaching us lessons, and sometimes it takes a while to be able to look back and understand, and it might not be until we're upstairs with Him that we're able to
Right.
see
That's
why
right.
all that happened, but. So, in PS, anybody running a business like you has experienced the same thing. It's just different to have to do quarterly calls to the world about
That's
it.
right. That's
Uh,
right.
so there's no hiding when oil drops 80%. So
Nope.
that's not your own doing. But
Yeah.
so tell us what happened after that. I know that I'm sure that was a
So the
major
beauty
part.
of the model, the MLP model, was that we were making quarterly distributions.
Right.
So while I was running the public company, we built a real estate business, and then kind of a private equity business where we had um, individual ownership in some companies. So I didn't. That's what happened. Is when I finally got out of that, I went to start another oil business, which has been a lot of fun when we're back doing it just with our money. We're not taking anybody else's right now. And then we had built with my brother. He came back in and built a really great uh, real estate business, and we had So we had a little bit of cash at the time because oil was doing good, and a lot of our oil and gas friends were knew they needed to diversify. So we
Yeah.
built a real estate company where we would take 10 to 20% investment and then bring our friends in for the balance. And when '08 happened and nobody else had cash, oil and gas guys had a lot of cash. So we were able to
That's true.
buy a lot of real estate. And like oil prices, I tell people my IQ is tied to the price of oil. When the price of oil is going up, I'm very, very smart. When it's going down, I'm not very smart.
Yeah.
Well, in real estate, when interest rates are coming down, you feel pretty smart because everything gets more and more valuable. And so we had that run from '08 and made a lot of progress on the real estate side during that time. So when I finally did get out of the oil and gas or the public thing, there was there were things for me to do
Yeah. Yeah.
and to march back in. And so that's what I did and never really missed a beat. I went from one day we were in the same building, so I actually moved down a few floors to go back and to my old office and get right after it and let the public thing keep going. So it was that's what happened. That's how I didn't never missed a meal and never you know I'm grateful to God that I lost that much money and somehow still am able to enjoy grandkids and kids and do some things.
Well, you know, obviously, I know we've talked about this before about kind of perspective. And I think,
Hmm.
I'm speculating, but,
Okay.
a lot of times we do learn more things in the rough times than the good times.
Yep.
If nothing else, humility and who's in charge,
Right.
and God can give it to us and he can take it away. So you want to talk about a little bit of your worldview? I think one of the things I know people are listening to this and thinking, that sounded way more terrible than he made it sound because you have kind of a calmness about you, you know? Where does that calmness come from?
So one of the joys of getting to be partners with my dad and really the culture in Midland, there were several really successful business guys in
Yeah,
Midland that loved Jesus. And they taught me early on, Cary, you are a steward of whatever God's given you. And if you can run fast, God gave you that. If you're smart, God gave you that. If you have a business, God gave you that. And He didn't give it to you, He gave it to you to steward. So
mhm,
when you're running a business for the Lord, um, He can take it away and He can grow it. And I've been on both sides of it. I've
yeah,
watched Him do things. I never said, never set out to take a company public. And, we just kept, our motto in our shop was the next right thing. We just kept trying to do the next right thing. But um, dad taught me just money was never what he was after. It was never something that um, now he was pretty, he taught a lot of you give God your first fruits. And if you're doing this for God and if you're working for the Lord, you better do a good job, right? Not so you can get rich, but you need to do a good job because you're working for the Lord. And that can get you a lot of good places. But probably that calmness comes from dad had a blue chair in his office and I'd go sit in there and he's 83 now, so we still talk most days
oh, great.
and get to do. But when when you have the perspective of I'm just a manager of God's resources, these aren't my resources. And so when it all kind of went away, I was surprised. I honestly, Jeff, never knew I could lose that much money that
Right.
quickly. And if you'd have told me I could lose that much money and still be standing, I would be like, wow. But it wasn't um, the 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 hard part really was the people around you. And in a public business, they're when you're losing money, they're losing money.
Right.
And you're that's strain on relationships and
Right.
going to I'd go to church every Sunday and people go, hey, why is the stock up or why is the stock down? And that was a
Right.
little bit uncomfortable. Um, and but it wasn't. Dad never came in and said, "Hey, son, why'd you lose all this money?" That was never a. We were partners. One of the things he told me, he's actually telling about marriage was marriage is a partnership, and in a good partnership, when things go good, they're twice as good because you get to share them, and when things go bad, they're
Mm.
half as bad because you got somebody else to carry the weight. So
Mm.
I had a lot of time in the chair, if you will, with Dad, and talking about, hey, why this might happen. But then we were on to the next right thing, which is what God was calling us to do next. And at that time, real estate was pretty active, and working with my brother was very active. Doing some of these other things. So I don't know. I don't know if that answered your
Well, no,
question,
I
but
mean, it reminds me of one of my old friends and clients after '08 and '09 when the stock market, goes down 50%. He said, I don't know why God wanted to lose half his money in the account I'm stewarding, but he,
yep,
I guess, yeah, I like the way he said it because he was less emotional
yeah,
about it and was frankly able to kind of ride things back up when you don't. If you think it's yours, you tend to grip it harder when you say,
yep,
and then maybe your decision making isn't quite as good. So to be able to kind of come out of that sort of emotionally healthy and go to the next thing and think clearly, as opposed to kind of getting overwhelmed with your loss, as
right,
opposed to, 'cause I like the shared burden. I
yeah,
like that sort of picture of
and
like, it's not all mine. It wasn't all mine to begin with. So it just, I think maybe emotionally that makes it easier. You know what I mean?
yeah,
To do.
it does, and it does. If you God owns it all, and He's got a. It's not. Um, if He needs you to have it and steward it, then He'll put it in your bucket, and if He doesn't, then He's going to put it in somebody else's bucket or wherever it needs to go, and that helps a lot. It is hard, Jeff, when you have had some resources to move. It's easy to ride the elevator up. Riding the elevator
Right.
down,
Yeah.
and there are numerous, and I will tell you, uh, I don't speak as one who has um, mastered the God owns it all.
Yeah.
That
Right.
that is what I desire to have, and that's where I I believe that's the right paradigm to have. But way too often I get into the paradigm of Cary did this and Cary did that, and look how good I am, and I'm uh, I built this big company to come public, and look how great I am. When that happens, it sucks a lot of joy out, and so I war against that, and I keep trying to remind myself that, hey, we're just here doing what God wants us to do. And if I can pass that, Dad was a master at that. He didn't.
Yeah.
Um, Early on, he was super involved. We were working at it together. Didn't take very long before he was doing mostly ministry, and his biggest job was coaching me through whatever lessons that we had, and he mostly did that by asking questions. But that if when the other thing he taught me a lot about is entitlement. And when it started to become, I deserve this, and this
Yeah.
is when, uh, so Dad didn't play golf at all. He wasn't a golfer. And I could tell I enjoyed golf. And whenever I'd want to golf, he'd come in and sit in my office. He'd always make me late for a tee time. I don't
Right.
know that
Right.
he did it
Right.
on
Right. Right.
purpose or not, but there was a time in there where he bought me a membership to a country club, the
Mm.
country club there in Midland. Um, and that's I think about my paradigm with God being God owns it all. He's also a loving God that really wants you to enjoy all of the blessings that come with whatever it is you're doing. He didn't want me not to be a member of a country club. He didn't want me not. What I think I would say is he doesn't want me to be defined by
Mm.
being a member of a country club. And so when that becomes something that I need or is who I am, and not something I joy is part of the blessing of being his, his faithful servant in this. Um, I don't know how that, but when I feel it creep into my life, and I can feel the times, and my wife and I talk a lot about when you have a little bit of resources, you tend to get a little bit soft because people, you're in nice places. You walk in, they know your name, they bring the food you want to eat. The car shows up on time. Um, and when you get out of that bubble, you don't have the gratitude necessarily that you need to have because you feel entitled to it. And the more you have, the more entitled you feel. And so that paradigm of this is all God's, and I'm serving a loving God who doesn't want to take anything from me. He wants me to own. He wants me to enjoy all of the blessings that come with whatever job I'm in. But when it becomes those aren't blessings to you, those are entitlements, and they're going to suck the joy out of your life. I don't. I suspect when I get to heaven, he's going to go, well, Cary, you kind of were getting pretty uppity there, and you probably were thinking a lot, and I thought this might be good for you long term. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it it helps you get some perspective.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about my own scorecard as you're talking.
Yep.
And I just think in a capitalistic society, frankly, in almost all societies, sometimes the personal balance sheet creeps in there a little too high on the scorecard, you know? And it's like, what, as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, what is the right scorecard? And I'm thinking, what does God want our scorecard to be? And I would say intimacy with him, probably, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah.
And and the more intimacy we have with him, the less we care about the material stuff. And then I also like intimacy is also asking him, since he's the owner, not us, really like it's the gift of the struggle to have to go to him and say, can I have the country club membership? Like, what are you
Right.
allowing me to be thankful for everything he allows you to keep?
Right.
Um, Rather than I'm entitled to 100% and I'll give 10% to you, God, of mine. It's like,
Right.
what of his will he allow us to spend it on? Those are very different perspectives that even if the spending ends up the same, our mentality is different, like entitlement versus thankfulness, right? And
Right.
then
And that stewardship versus entitlement is uh, it's going to be a challenge for anybody who's growing a business because God God puts that drive in there.
right,
And if you're doing business, the scorecard is did you make money or not make money?
right,
And if I'm a 10 talent guy, God's kept score. You got
right.
10 talents, I expect you to get 10 more. So I keep
You
score.
got to keep the
And
machine running,
how right, you have to keep score, right? Because
but to what
that's
end?
how else do you know?
Yeah,
But how can you keep score without being defined by the scoreboard?
right.
And I I've watched guys, and I would say there are plenty of examples of ones who've done it. I don't know anyone that doesn't struggle. I
Yeah,
I prayed a lot about it, and I said, God, should I give you 10%? Should I give you 20%? Should I give you 30%? What's the right answer of how
right.
much do I put back in the business and how much do I take out? And my conclusion, I don't know if this is right for everybody else, but my conclusion is God always wants me to struggle with that. He
Exactly.
always wants me to be asking the question
Yes.
of, is this becoming about me and my lifestyle or the stewardship of what I've entrusted to you? And, um, there's, uh, there are people who've done that a lot better than I have, but those are the ones that I look up to and go, hey, those guys have been able to keep the drive, because that's the hard part when you get to a certain spot.
Right.
If it's all about your lifestyle, then your drive kind of goes away a little bit.
Yeah, you got enough
um
stuff.
and so it's not another new car, new house. It's helped me. My kids have kind of come back around where I'm getting to work with my next generation, and being able to pass it on a little bit like my dad did to me. That's helped me have a little bit more drive than I would have. But I struggle with. if God owns it all and I'm a steward of that, having enough drive to continue to do it like I used to.
Well, we kind of call about the re-risking, and I think our society has it wrong, right? I don't think retirement in the traditional sense isn't really biblical. Like to your point,
Right.
there's a stewardship responsibility. You don't have to do the same exact job description, but you got to keep the wheels turning
Yeah,
to use what he gave you in maybe different times of life
that's
in
right.
different ways. And I know you're trying to do that with your kids the way your dad really empowered you. I think you're doing an amazing job doing the same thing there. And then it seems like just from reading the things you're involved in that this is kind of a worldview that you're trying to pass on to people beyond your family as well. Like you're doing some things in the tech community and in the public school community. You want to just talk about what's that about? What's sort of motivating that, and what are you kind of hoping to do there?
So, I'm a pretty strategic giver in terms of dad's more relational giver,
Yeah,
and he and I talk about that. But not that he's not strategic; he's plenty strategic. But one of the things that's my biggest engagement is with a group called First Priority that's doing on-campus evangelism in public schools, and that came from probably 20 years almost now ago. Jeff, I was sitting there reading Wall Street Journal, and it said most of our kids today are growing up in non-traditional homes. And I thought about what I learned from my mom and my dad. I learned about
right.
Jesus. I learned to tell the truth. I learned to work hard. And on scale, to address that epidemic is
Mhm.
difficult at best. And I couldn't, I, I didn't have any way you'd go, okay, how do we tackle that? I mean, that's a
Right.
big problem.
That is a big problem.
Only, I think maybe 10, 12% of kids will actually get to church these days. So
Yeah.
we don't have, the church can't go there. So this First Priority is the ministry that I found, and they're they're using the business leaders to coalesce the church around this problem. What the guts of it are, kids can get together and form a club. So
Hmm.
if you get all the Christian kids in a school to form an evangelism club,
Yeah.
then they can go tell their friends about Jesus. And guys like you and me, we buy pizza. And if
Right.
those and I told Mark, I said, you can't break me in donuts and pizza. If what I got to do is buy donuts, so these kids have a kind of a hook to get their friends to come hear their testimony. So I think last year there's over 6,000 kids that we trained to share the gospel in public schools, and about 30,000 kids are meeting weekly now, across the southeast primarily, but across the country. So it's kind of fun. I think we're seeing a little bit of revival in
We are.
uh, males,
Young people.
especially, are starting to go. They're looking at us and going, "You guys, what y'all are doing
You
isn't
missed it.
working." And
Yeah.
they're headed, and you can tell people they've turned on the church a little bit, they've turned on government
Right.
a little bit, but they haven't turned on Jesus. They
No, that's
still
right.
are interested in Jesus, and
That's right.
anything I can do to help get Jesus to where people can hear it in a language, and their language is from their friends. And I don't mean there's other people that work Bible translation. I'm talking about from somebody who can tell them how Jesus loves them, and he's not just a
Yeah.
boss that's telling them what to do. So
Yeah.
I spend lot of time doing that. And at this stage of life, I'm hopefully moving more into the sage role and less into the
Yeah.
doer role. And that's been a fun one to work with those guys. I'm real proud of the way they're doing it.
And you're doing a little something in the tech industry as well, right?
Yeah, I worked with had the opportunity to work with a group called Kingdom Giving Fund, Jeff, where we had some families that were uh, working on strategic, doing a little bigger gifts to ministries, and one of them we made was to Faith Tech, and they needed somebody to sit on their board, so I helped them kind of navigate, and they're working in the tech space to help people understand what it means to that can be a dark space, but if you look at
Yeah.
it, there are some people in that space that are bright lights, and so they're working in that, and it felt like a good fit to say, hey, this is going to be a big part of our future. And even in that, I think we're starting to see a little bit of revival as people are starting to come back and say, hey, may not like the church, but tell me about this Jesus guy. and
Hmm.
uh, and I think that's the challenge we have, to bring the church into those lives in a way that they can be effective.
Yeah. I mean, it just, um, I like the way you said it, that you're trying to bring to others what you've had the benefit of kind of learning at home.
That's
I mean,
right.
you kind of hit the lottery on parents, I would say.
Oh,
And
I'm
not
so
everybody
grateful.
has. Not everybody
That's right.
has. So how do we help them learn these same principles?
Right.
And I just think that's amazing. So I know we're kind of getting up on time, and so this has just been a lot of fun. But okay, so we got a lot of business owners listening to this. Somebody behind you on the journey, they're like, man, I'd love to use this platform a little more to think about how God would have me. But what's a step I could take in the right direction? What's some kind of practical tip somebody behind you on the journey could take tomorrow?
So I've been so influenced, Jeff, by the people that were in my life, my dad
Yeah,
and the other
yeah,
business leaders in
yeah.
Midland. I would encourage them, find somebody whose life you respect,
Mm,
take them to lunch and talk to them
yeah,
and ask them how they navigated some of these questions of stewardship and entitlement and that, because you can't do it by yourself. God's
right.
there for you, but I find that if you have a humble spirit, people really do want to help
They
you
do.
along that path. And if you don't have that, um, if it's a, you can find pretty quickly that guys with resources can smell a ways away if you're going out to get something.
Yeah.
But if you really just need help, I believe God will provide those guys for you that can help you walk through the journey that you're on in ways that'll be fun and don't, So I guess I'd probably say, don't be afraid to ask that guy to lunch.
And I love that because 25 years ago, when somebody gave me that advice and I kind of stepped out of my comfort zone, I was like, oh man, these guys are running big companies or they're too busy. They don't want, what are they going to waste their time with me for? I was pleasantly surprised at because they would tell me not that many people ask, actually.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah,
think now that we're in that age and stage, maybe delivering some of that stuff, and I think I still have mentors that I ask questions of, but
yeah,
do a little mentoring also. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you go ask what the reception is like. Would you agree?
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Well,
So,
anyway, Cary, this has been a whole lot of fun, man. Thanks for
hey,
joining
Jeff,
and sharing
thanks a
your
lot.
story.
Appreciate it.
And thanks everybody for joining us on this week's Generous Business Owner podcast. Share it with a friend, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.